Are you a poet and didn't know it? Maybe have a way with words? Here is your chance to show off your skills and impress your friends as we take a look at Poetic License. License is a drafting game where players create, refine, and narrate their own poem or haiku, and these are traditional forms of Japanese poetry, and I'll admit some of my favorite. The poems consist of only 3 lines. The first and the last line of a haiku is made up of 5 syllables, while the middle line has 7. So here, let me demonstrate. The T-Rex likes you, but he can't give you a hug. His arms are too short. Okay, maybe I should just stick to making videos. Yeah, okay, let's just do that. Okay, so let's set up a game of Poetic License, and I'll show you how to play. The game takes place over 2 rounds, and each round has 4 phases, and we'll talk about each of those here shortly. So first, give each player one of these handy-dandy double-sided reference cards. Now, we're going to take our word bank cards, which have Poetic License printed on the back, and shuffle them together. So this deck will consist of 40 nouns, 40 verbs, 24 adjectives, 16 adverbs, and 6 wilds. Next, shuffle each parts of speech deck and place them in separate piles according to type. And just make sure you place them where everyone can reach them. Now these are going to include 10 articles, 6 conjunctions, 6 interjections, 6 prepositions, and 8 pronouns. And if you need a little reminder of what these types of words are, then pause this video and go check out some Schoolhouse Rock. You can thank me later. Now we need to separate the snap decks, and these are used for scoring, so each dot on a card is a snap. The more people like your poem, the more snaps you can get. And the number of snaps used is going to vary based on the numbers of players you have in your game. So 3 people, you're going to use the 1 and 2 snap decks. 4 games, use the 1, 2, and 3 snap decks. And if you have a 5-player game, then use all of the snap decks. Okay, now that everything is set up, let's get the first round started. Deal each player 12 cards from the shuffled word bank deck. This will be their hand of cards, and then set the remainder of the cards just off to the side because we're going to use those in the next round. Go ahead and flip over the top card from each of the parts of speech decks, and also the top card of all of the snap decks. I mentioned earlier that each round takes place over 4 phases: the poem crafting phase, the poem narrating phase, the snap voting phase, and the round resetting or in-game phase. The poem crafting phase is your opportunity to shine. You and the other players will simultaneously compose a short 3-line poem. Remember, we called it a haiku. The first line has to have those 5 syllables. The second line will have 7. And the third line will again have 5 syllables. Now, how do you know what a syllable is? Well, and how many a word has? Simple. It is the number of dots in the upper right-hand corner of the card. Now, in some cases, there will also be instances where you can change the tense of a word. So, for example, changing repairs to will repair will add a syllable. And you can see that here with this plus dot. There are also wild cards. You're going to have to count those symbols on your own. As part of this phase, you can take one action. So let's review what those are. Select and play a card from your hand into the poem. And to do this, you choose one of the cards from your hand, add it to the poem in front of you. One thing to keep in mind though, all words must be played in order. So you could not play a card from your hand that you want to use in the third line if you're still working on the first. Now you can choose to play a card from one of the parts of speech decks from the center of the table. You'll just choose one from the face-up cards and then flip over the new card from the deck. Now let's talk about your poetic license. This lets you modify your poem in a number of ways. So first, you can switch the position of a card already in your poem with another card. Or maybe you have a card in your hand that would be perfect. You can swap those out. Lastly, you can choose to remove a card from your poem entirely and just set the card aside. You can rearrange the poem as much as you want to, but you've got to find the balance between editing and completing your poem so that you get those bonus snaps. We'll talk about those next. Once everyone has completed their action for the round, they'll pass their hand of cards to the next player. So in the first round, the cards are going to head to the left. In the second round, you're going to pass everything to the right. As soon as you complete your poem, you take the highest snap card from the table. This is going to count as your bonus points once we get to that snap voting phase. Now you're a poet. It's time to share your creation. Each player will take a turn reciting their poem in the most creative, dramatic, or hilarious way that you can. And this is called the poem narrating phase. Once all the poems have been read, and each player will then take the snap cards from the table, secretly give the highest number of snaps to their favorite poem, second highest number of snaps to their second favorite poem, and so on. You just can't vote for your own poem. Once all the points have been assigned, discard the cards and move to round 2. The poet with the most snaps at the end of 2 rounds is declared the winner. And that, my friends, is Poetic License. I really love how easy this game is to pick up and just play. It really sneaks in some educational pieces that you're not even really thinking about. So you can play this with your friends, have a hilarious good time. You can play it with your kiddos and teach them about nouns and verbs and prepositions and conjunctions. This game's available now on Kickstarter from our friends at Arena Games LLC. We'll leave a link in the description below. And that does it for this video. Thanks so much for joining us. If you liked it, please give us a thumbs up and consider subscribing to the channel so you can follow all the ways that we're bringing people together one game at a time.